Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Wildcard. I'll be your host tonight, Ali. You can follow me on Twitter at FF Dynasty Grill. With me, as always, are my two amazing co-hosts. Introduce Kev first, who you can follow on Twitter at Dynasty_GOAT. How you doing, Kev?
I'm doing great, Ali. It's the best time of the year, start of free agency, Cheltenham. Got a tip for Friday for anyone that's listening, Langer Dan in the last. So if you want to win a bit of cash, make sure you get on that. Got that tip from a guy in a sandwich shop, so obviously it's a reliable source. But yeah, just wow, free agency is just amazing.
Yeah, it's not even legal free agency yet, is it? It's still the tampering period. So yeah, things could still hot up. I'll come to my next amazing co-host, Matt. You can follow on Twitter at MattFFDynasty. How you doing, Matt?
Yeah, I'm doing really good. Thanks, Ali. Like Kev said, legal tampering just starting. So it's been a crazy couple of days, but I've had some exciting news come through. Leads us up nicely for the show we've got coming up. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Indeed. We've had a few headliners the last couple of days, some shock unretirements, I guess. We'll start right there with the GOAT, Tom Brady. Just want to get your guys' opinions on, were you surprised and how does this affect things going forward?
Yeah, I'll start by saying it's no surprise either that you want to talk about Brady first. Everything that's happened the past couple of days, but now I think it makes sense. One of the greatest quarterbacks ever making a return. We were just saying, weren't we, before we came live? I was quite shocked by it. I thought there was maybe a chance he could come back, but I was thinking more maybe next year or maybe later on this year if I don't know, if the Buccaneers struggle with whatever quarterback they had, maybe he just fancied coming back and saying, I can sort this and leading your Bucs to the playoffs and the Super Bowl once again. But yeah, I was surprised to see him come back. In terms of fantasy, it's repaid anybody that kept faith in him, held on to him in those dynasty leagues, and yeah, maybe we were able to pick him up off waivers if somebody did decide to drop him. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens now with the Buccaneers as well, Ali, with your team moving into next year. We know there's a lot of free agents, so maybe a few could decide that they fancy another year with Brady.
Yeah, just echoing what Matt says, I think it's amazing for the skill position players. If you've held on to Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, you've not panicked, sold those, then you're absolutely loving life. I think it's really interesting the fact that the rest of the NFC South have absolutely started bricking it. It seems that they're all linked with another high-profile QB. Obviously, when Brady was supposedly gone, it was a wide-open division. But I think with him coming back, it's firmly in the Bucs' hands. There might be some teams that try and make the big splash. Maybe the next guy we're going to talk about, actually. But yeah, it's the Bucs to lose again, which is very disappointing for me, knowing how much of a neutral and unbiased fan you are, Ali.
Indeed, always unbiased when I talk about Tom Brady, but I just, I mean, we're going to win the Super Bowl, aren't we? Especially we've just got Russell Gage, you know. What a superstar!
I can't believe Russell Gage has made it into the headline section. That is,
Ali were always going to sneak it in. Anything related to the Bucs, Ali was sneaking that one in.
It must be a Tampa thing, I think, because 5-yard rushers Murph touted him as a wide receiver to in Dynasty last year. They've got obviously Ali loving him this year. Must be a Bucs thing. Fire the cannons.
Oh, absolutely. I just want to say one thing on Brady. I hope you did hold on to him. I unfortunately didn't. I bottled it in one league and I traded him away for a 4th round pick. Dan, you've absolutely robbed me there, mate. But we're going to move on.
He's another Bucs fan, isn't he?
He is another Bucs fan, yeah. So at least we've got that.
He's a true fan there. That's a true fan, Ali. Somebody that held on to the game.
I jump off. But yeah, you mentioned him earlier there, Kev. Deshaun Watson is the next headliner. Obviously, as we record in this, he's still not signed for anybody yet, but it's looking like it's come down to possibly 4 teams, the Saints, the Panthers, and the Falcons, all for the NFC South. Obviously, they've seen Brady come back to the division and thought, oh dear, we need to get a decent quarterback to compete. Then you've also got the Cleveland Browns. So just want to get your guys' thoughts on Deshaun Watson.
Yeah. Go on,
Go on,
Matt.
Kev. No, go on.
You sure? Rock,
You
paper,
were
scissors?
so eager then.
Oh,
I think you should take this one.
Fine then. Go on then. Yeah, I mean, first of all, Watson, I'd sent a few offers out before he got cleared. Some that had been open for a week or two, and I'd not had a reply back because of inactive owners, which a bit gutting because I was looking to move off the 101 in a couple of leagues. Hopefully, moving off my league list to Deshaun Watson, but obviously that price has gone now. Never mind. But yeah, I think all legal troubles aside, it's amazing. The fact that Watson is a top 6 QB, you probably still don't have to pay that. I think there'll still be that cloud of how many games they're going to miss. It's hard to think of him as a QB2 offer it QB2 on a contending team. You can't really go and pay for that, expecting him to be that, because he might miss 8 games, he might miss 12 games, he might miss a season, and there's got the landing spot as well. I know it's not massive because he's an amazing talent and he'll thrive wherever, but if he lands in a place like the Browns, where the more run heavy, you'd hope they'd change the scheme a little bit, but if not, maybe it does cap his ceiling.
Yeah, I think, like you said, there's still a lot of question marks in there when it comes to Watson. Obviously, now we know he's not going to be ending up in jail, but we still don't know what's going to happen in terms of the NFL. Is it suspension? How long if he is going to be suspended? And then that just again throws up question marks about what he can produce for you in fantasy next season. But in terms of the landing spots, there's definitely some interesting places. I mean, the Panthers, I think that's the one that stands out to me personally. I've seen a lot of talk. If we were to go to the Panthers, DJ Moore, I think the hype on him is going to be hard to hold back again. It's usually high as it is, but with Deshaun Watson now at quarterback, I've seen people saying it's going to go right up to the wide receiver 3 in their dynasty rankings. So,
wow.
Yeah, definitely a great spot. Christian McCaffrey as well there, obviously as well. Just another great weapon for Watson. But like you said, Kev, it's going to be interesting to see where his value goes in startups now. Like you said, I think we did a startup recently and I got him in the 4th or 5th round, taking that punt on him becoming the starter. And I believe we did one last year as well, didn't we, Kev? One that we're in together, and I got him super late, like round 8. Obviously, that was fresh before we even. It was a risky pick. Obviously, we didn't know what the situation would be. But now seeing what's going to happen in terms of startups, is he going to jump up to that first round? I would expect him to, but like you said, maybe people aren't quick to make that move. And if you can get him early second round, you've got a potential top 5 quarterback in the second round.
Shall I tell you what, actually? I think that it should be going in the first round because it's a little bit thinking like a Trey Lance from last season, where you know he's going to miss some of the season through sitting on the bench behind Jimmy G. It's a little bit different with Watson, but Lance was going in first round of a lot of drafts, so why not Watson?
Yeah. Certainly the time to trade for him is probably gone. I think you were bang on, Kevin. Far and away offers of the 101 for Watson, especially around the hype of the combine and the hype that Willis has got. They're starting to cool down a little bit. I think you could have. I think you could have got him, but I think you're going to be paying a lot more to get him now, especially when he does land on a team. I think then his price is really going to rocket even more. Yeah. But I'm going to talk about the third guy. We've gone from the GOAT. We've gone from Deshaun Watson, the elite quarterback. We're now gone on to Carson Wentz. And over to you, Kev, an ex-Eagle legend.
Oh, God. I mean, it's great for the Eagles getting to play twice a year. No, we know what Carson Wentz is. He's streaky as a passer. He's pretty decent fantasy when he plays. He was on that QB1 cusp this season. Is he going to elevate the talent around him like your McLaurins, your Curtis Samuels? Well, I doubt it. I'm just really worried about Carson Wentz. I've got him in a few leagues. The fact that he's bounced from team to team to team in the last 2 seasons as such. And when you're thinking about your QB2 for in Dynasty, all you want is job security, someone that's going to have the job for 2 or 3 years guaranteed. And to be honest, I can't really see that with Wentz. I think he might be a one and done potentially. They might take someone in the draft as well. So, yeah, I'd be I'm still worried about Wentz. You've got a small window to get off him while he's a starter.
Yeah, I think you've just nailed it then with that last point, Kev. I think this is probably the time now to take advantage of the fact that he's landed in a new situation. There's going to be people that are going to be potentially excited that he's moved teams. He's got somebody like McClone, who's obviously a dynasty player, that a wide receiver that a lot of people tend to like in the community. There could be a little bit of excitement about him. And just the fact that he is going to be a starter again next season is giving you that chance to move off him. And I agree with you, Kev. I think I'm looking to move off him if at all possible. Kind of see it as a lateral move, really, in terms of what he can do. I think going from the Colts to the Commanders still doesn't feel right saying that. But in terms of the talent around him, he might not have the elite running back like Jonathan Taylor, but I mean Antonio Gibson. Ali, I'm sure you'll agree with me. He's no slouch, so he's got a solid running back there. And then, as I say, guys like McLaurin, Kev's favourite wide receiver, and Curtis Samuel as well. There's still some talent around him, and hopefully he can at least continue to be viable in Superflex leagues and get you the points. But yeah, it's not somebody I'm getting excited about, and if at all possible, I'm looking to move off.
Yeah, couldn't have summed it up any better, really. And I'm glad you mentioned Antonio Gibson, because he's going to be the overall running back one next season.
Love it.
So we'll get on to today's topic. So on today's show, we're going to be reacting to the start of the 2022 free agency period, and then giving our analysis from a dynasty perspective. And naturally, we're going to start with the quarterback position. So over to you, Kev. Who are you going to talk about?
Indeed, I'm going to start the show with a guy that I started the show with three shows ago, actually, Mitch Trubisky. He signed a deal with the Steelers, 2 years, $14.25 million. It's incentive based, so it can go up to $27 million. Stealing a phrase from our good friend Tom. He's now the starting QB for the Mitchburg Steelers. For how long, we don't know, though. I wouldn't be shocked to see a QB get drafted by them, but I do think he's an interesting option for fantasy. Trubisky he's actually a little bit like having a sesh on the Jaeger bombs. Hear me out. He's fun to begin with, but you do regret it after a while. I don't see franchise QB in his range of outcomes, but I think he can be great for fantasy. He can be a contributor. There was a really nice tweet by Josh Larkin back in February that in his 50 games he's started, he's been a QB1 16 times. That might not sound great, but for a QB3, that's really solid. That you haven't paid for him. He's got a bigger arm than Ben, although I'm not sure about the results. If it'll be any different. I mean, he's going to be good for fantasy through being a dual threat QB, but it might not be great news for guys like Najee Harris. An interesting tweet by Garrett Price of Dynasty Nerds said that Trubisky had one of the lowest check down rates, which is the opposite of Big Ben and his noodle arm. I guess the flip side is that there was guys like Tariq Cohen that have thrived with Trubisky, but that's more of the design stuff. How they're going to do more design stuff for Najee. And then the other thing I like about Trubisky is that exposure to the cold weather, that he's got that experience previously. But when I think of Trubisky, I do get a little bit sad about Marcus Mariota, that he's still not got a job out there. So I'm just banking on the Colts doing the right thing for my mental health. So I just want to get your thoughts on how you think Trubisky's signing will impact the Steelers' skill positions.
Yeah, so I'll start with Najee. I think, to be honest, for me personally, I don't think there's a big change in that. You touched upon the fact about the dump offs. That's obviously a negative. Trubisky, not somebody that's known for the dump offs. But if you look at Najee, he played 57 snaps in the slot, which was third most amongst running backs. And then when you look at Trubisky when he was the starter in 2019, he actually targeted the slot 71.2% of the time when targeting his receivers. So now with Juju not there as well, if Najee can maybe even see a little bit more in terms of slot snaps, then I think that's going to counteract any factor that he's losing out on dump offs. And we also know Trubisky as well with that rushing ability, he's at least going to extend plays. You'd think that hopefully that could lead to more opportunity for Najee in terms of the running game. And yeah, so for Najee, I'm going to say not too much change. But then going on to the wide receivers, I think Deontay Johnson, it's got to be a downgrade for me personally. Just looking at Trubisky, like I touched upon with the deep ball completion percentage, he was bottom half in the NFL in 2019 when he was the starter, and then 26 in money throws as well. So that is a concern when you're thinking about the wide receivers and the role that Deontay Johnson plays. And then again with Chase Claypool, I'm going to say similar potential downgrade, but with Claypool, I do think, and the skill set that he has, I think maybe they can manufacture more touches for Claypool. We've seen him being used as things like jet sweeps, screens, things like that. So potentially, I think Claypool maybe not as much of a downgrade for me personally. And then it's the big man, Postman Pat. I'm going to say I think that could potentially be an upgrade for Postman Pat. Potentially not for the quarterback, but I just think in general taking that second year step forward in his production. I just touched upon Juju going. That could open up some more snaps in the slot. If you just look at his 2021, he had 146 snaps, which was 32% of his snaps in the slot. But if you look at the league leaders in terms of tight ends, a lot of the top guys seem to be seeing 65%. So, and we know how valuable that can be for tight ends in fantasy. So if Postman Pat Frymouth, if he can start seeing some more snaps in the slot, and as I touched upon with Trubisky, he likes to target that slot. I think potentially it could be a boost for Frymouth.
I think you've summed up pretty well. I'm actually pretty neutral on Deontay. He's my current wide receiver 10 in Dynasty, and I think I'm going to keep him at wide receiver 10. Absolutely love the talent. And if you see how bad Big Ben was last year, I struggled to think how much worse Trubisky could be. It may be less mistakes, more mistakes for Trubisky. But I think it's a slight uptick for Claypool. Obviously, he can throw it a lot further than Big Ben. Didn't really work out for Claypool last year, although his stats down the field, as you alluded to, Matt, really aren't amazing. 2019 deep ball completion percentage was 34.8%, which ranked 19th. Then it got worse in 2020. It was 26.7%, which ranked 35th. So not a good look there. Yards and air yards, but per attempt for both years were down in the 20s or the 30s. So it's not great. And I think it's a slight downgrade for Najee, although obviously he has that Russian floor and his massive usage. And obviously there's going to be less dump-offs, but clearly he's still a massive part of the offense. And he's a rare workhorse, which we don't see often around the league anymore. And then the superstar Postman Pat is pretty pretty neutral for me. I'm incredibly high on Postman Pat, and I think they could work magic between the two of them. Absolutely. So we're gonna move on to the running back position now. I'm over to you, Matt. Who are you going to talk about?
Yeah, I've gone for Chase Edmonds. Obviously, leaving the Cardinals and going to the Dolphins, 2-year deal, $12.6 million. I think just looking back to his last season, he did occasionally flash despite missing some time through injury. Finished as the RB24 in fantasy points per game. But overall, I think you'd say it was a disappointment. There was a lot of hype about Chase Edmonds last year. It was a lot of people talking about Edmonds over the fellow running back in James Conner, and I think Edmonds was a disappointment considering where he was going in drafts. But just looking forward now to the new landing spot, I'm really excited about the landing spot he's landed in with Miami. We know Mike McDaniel's the new head coach over there. Another coach from this Kyle Shanahan school of running back fantasy gold. So I'm excited to see how they use Edmonds in the running game and how this offense looks as a whole. But I do think it's really interesting. He's a capable rusher, but also a receiver as well. He's one of the better receivers in terms of running back. To be honest, underrated, I think, as a rusher. He's actually 12th in true yards per carry in 2021 amongst running backs and 11th in yards per touch. So on the opportunities that he did get, he showed that he can be a really solid running back. And then just touching on his receiving game, is used in the slot quite a lot for the Cardinals, 4th amongst running backs. I do question whether he gets that kind of role now with the Dolphins. Just looking at the moves that the Dolphins have made, obviously they've got Waddle, they've tagged Mike Gesicki, who played a lot in the slot, Cedric Wilson as well coming in, who played in the slot for the Cowboys. So yeah, maybe he doesn't quite see those slot opportunities that he saw with the Cardinals. But overall, I think it's a really exciting landing spot. Probably the landing spot we were most excited about in terms of the rookie running backs as well. So I will still have some concerns. Do Miami still potentially look at a running back in the draft? And as I say, we do like that landing spot if a running back were to go there. But just my question back to you guys is, what do you think Edmonds' ceiling can be in 2022? Just looking back at his career best, RB25 in 2020. Do you think he can top that in this offense?
I think he can. I called Connor's and Edmonds' landing spots just pure perfection when it dropped. Love it for both. then you look at Miles Gaskin. He was running back 24 last season, and he was incredibly inconsistent. Had one really big game, and then some really terrible games where he got like 3 points, 5 points. So he's really inconsistent. And I think Edmonds is a much better running back than Gaskin. So definitely for me, I can say top 12 to 16 range as his ceiling. I think is a high running back too. That's if he can stay healthy. Then it was just funny on Twitter to see the immediate reaction was sell Edmonds, sell him right now. But I just think if people are going to be so focused on wanting to get rid of him, then I'll be buying for possibly saying early to mid second. I'll be throwing out some offers. I think that it's quite interesting to get Edmonds. I think he can be sort of a high running back too if he can stay healthy.
Yeah, just echoing what you guys have said about the landing spot. It's one of my favourites as well. Obviously ties Mike McDaniel. You think of Elijah Mitchell last season. You think of the Jets scheme as well, Michael Carter. The fact that it's proven well for these smaller dudes.
That's more down to talent, I think.
But yeah, for Edmonds, I see a top 15 ceiling, to be honest, if everything falls his right way. But I do think it's a fluid situation like San Fran. So while that ceiling's high, I think the floor's low. I think there is guys that are still around. Gaskin, Duke Johnson, who I'm a big fan of. So is my laptop. Salvan Ahmed, Raheem Mostert's been rumoured to be linking up again. So yeah, there's a few landmines there. I think you'll need a bit of luck with the O-line additions, what they add as well, because I think it's just going to run like the 49ers and their offense and offensive line. It's probably not going to be that easy. But yeah, I'd just be cautious going after Chase Edmonds right now, just because it's not a great time to be going after running backs before the draft. And the deal, 2 years, 12.6 million, it's going to be utilised. But he's not going to be a workhorse. He's going to be splitting it.
Yeah, it's going to be utilised, but it's still a fairly cheap deal on a team like you both mentioned could now draft a running back. And if it's one of the three top guys, then his value is definitely going to fall. Yeah. And then with that, we're going to move on to my pick. And it's a guy who got a massive payday in Christian Kirk to the Jags. I want to talk to his agent. He's the NFL equivalent of the Tinder swindler. And now Christian Kirk is the third highest player, wide receiver in the NFL behind Julio Jones and Nuke Hopkins. And yeah, we do know the Jags would have to overpay, but I think this is top end, certainly for a player that's yet to register 1,000-yard season in 4 attempts. And it's the same size deal that took Kenny Golladay to New York, but perhaps less ridiculous given the cap is much higher this season. But analysing it there's still a lot to like here. February's ADP had Christian Kirk at wide receiver 54. That's obviously certainly going to rise in the coming months, and probably rightly so. Put Kirk in the slot to work with Lawrence entering year 2, and I do think he will be the wide receiver 1 on the team, and possible 1,000-yard season will come as soon as year 1. Kirk had a 18% target share on the Cardinals, so I think that number can increase slightly in year 1 on the Jaguars. Just be really interesting to see how it plays out with, obviously, Laviska Shenault is there at the minute, and Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram, who they all like to see plenty of action in the slot, so it's going to be interesting to see how they're all utilised. Although it makes sense for the team right now to move on from Laviska Shenault, and there's clearly talks in the media that they're looking to ship him off. Either way, I do think Kirk's ceiling is a teeny bit higher for me. I did originally say that Kirk's ceiling was wide receiver 20 to 24. That was if he was staying on the Cardinals. I think even with an inexperienced quarterback like Trevor Lawrence, I think wide receiver 15, 16 is probably the highest I could expect to see him finish now. That's if he's really targeted, and they've clearly paid up for him. So if they're going to utilise him, and I can see him finishing sort of a mid to high run wide receiver 2. He was the wide receiver 17 from weeks 14 to 18, averaging nearly 8 targets per game and 13.6 PPR points. So I probably expect him to get close to this next season. So my question to you boys is, how does this impact your rankings for Kirk? And does he move up much with such a big payday?
Yeah, like you, I would prefer Arizona as his landing spot. I don't hate the ties to Trevor Lawrence. I think it's great, actually, but with Peterson, he likes to spread it like Lurpak. Wait, but I've lost my train of thought now. Kirk for me was wide receiver 38 before free agency. I'm going to drop him a little bit. I think the consensus, he'll end up rising in ranks based on the contract, based on being tied to Trevor Lawrence. So, I'm going to end up putting guys above him like Big Mike, Allen Robinson, if he doesn't land on Philly, and probably Adam Thielen as well, just because I've got Cousins for definite. So, it drops a little bit for me just because I think that hype will be a little bit too much, and I don't really want to get involved. I took quite a few shots at him this offseason already, so I don't want to be too overweight on Kirk.
Now, for me, to be honest, I've not moved him that much in terms of my rankings. I think there's cons, but there's also pros as well to the move. We talk about pace of play. I think with the Cardinals, obviously that air raid, high tempo offense that we were all super excited about, and then you go to the Jags, and they had the fourth least amount of plays per game in 2021. But then on the flip side, they were top half in terms of pass attempts per game, usually due to the fact that they were chasing games. Obviously, that defense wasn't great. And then there was concerns for me when he moved to the Jag that was he going to be put back outside like he had at spells with the Cardinals. But this previous season, obviously coming off his best season today, it was when he was used in the slot. I just had concerns that maybe they weren't going to use him in the slot. So they've got Laviska Shenault, Travis Etienne as well coming back, a guy that's really capable in the passing game and could see snaps in the slot. But by the sounds of it, it seems like Shenault could even potentially be up for trade. So I do think that Kirk is going to be that slot receiver, like you said, Ali, and for that, I'm perfectly fine with that. Tied to an exciting young quarterback, a quarterback that people seem to be down at the minute. But like you said, I think he's going to be that main guy. I mean, if money talks, he's going to be the wide receiver one on that offense. And while I don't see it as a major boost for him in terms of his value, I don't think it's the worst spot possible for him to land in.
Yeah, I love it. Kirk's clearly not an alpha type receiver, but I do think he's going to be that safety valve for Trevor Lawrence, and is going to be utilised in the slot, especially if they can ship off Laviska Shenault. But be exciting times. We're going to move on to another wide receiver who got the bag in Kev's pick. Who do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about him. I'm not really going to talk about him, to be honest. Michael Gallopy, he re-signed with the Cowboys, 5 years, $62.5 million deal. But we've touched upon Gallopy the last couple of shows, and it was our expectation they would re-sign. Solid money for a guy coming off a major injury, but he's not the guy I want to talk about. It's the other guy that was his former teammate, Amari Cooper, that's been traded to the Cleveland Browns for a fifth rounder. I think the initial community reaction of him going to the Browns is the drop in value. I know Matt did a poll on Twitter recently, and the consensus had Amari now valued at an early to mid second, which that's put him in the range of rookies like Dotson, Sky Moore, David Bell in startups. But go check where they're going in current wide receiver rankings. It's like wide receiver 40, 50. Is that where we're putting Amari Cooper? Me personally, I'm not. He's somehow only 27 years old. He's been a top 20 wide receiver 5 times already. And then there's the rumours we touched upon at the start that Deshaun's on the Browns' radar. So I think any move away from Baker to an upgrade would be mega, because Baker he tarnishes the value of everyone, really, Pollard. But I just want to get you guys' thoughts on Cooper's value after being traded to the Browns. Where does he currently sit in your dynasty rankings? Has he gone up or down?
Yeah, well, before I had him as my wide receiver 27, and kind of like a broken record out of these last few players. But again, he's a player that I'm not really moving, especially at this point in time. Just going to touch on Josh Larkin, a guy that we've already shouted out once on this show, but give him another shout out for
lucky guy.
I know he's obviously smashing it at the minute. Put out a great tweet, or it might be a TikTok. I'm not down with the kids, so I don't have TikTok, but it was on Twitter, but I think it's a TikTok. Just going over the projected stats that he could have with Cleveland Browns, just looking at his target share in Dallas, his catch rate, and then looking at Baker's pass attempts, etc. from last season. And it came up with 106 targets, 72 receptions, 958 yards, and 6 touchdowns. And now if you just look at that in terms of fantasy, that equates to 203.8 fantasy points, which is 12 fantasy points per game. So then if you just look back at the previous season, 2021, what Cooper had, He finished with 201.5 fantasy points, so pretty much neck and neck, although he did miss 2 games. Looking at a fantasy points per game perspective, 13.4. So, I mean, it's not a great difference, and that was before Jarvis Landry was released. So maybe you could now say that Cooper could see a few more targets, maybe a few more receptions, going off the potential downgrade in receiving competition alongside him. So, yeah, I think he's the wide receiver one there. And just with that and with the amount of targets that he could potentially see, I'm not going to get too hasty and move off that ranking of around wide receiver 27. I could bump him up or down a couple of spots, but he's not going to move too far.
Yeah, I'm actually a bit higher. He was my wide receiver 23 before the move to Cleveland. And I just think with so many moving parts happening, I don't want to move him just yet. So I'm not really being very bold. But I will just say that I'm not a massive fan of it, to be honest. He's clearly going to be the wide receiver one on the team, but the fact that he's Baker Mayfield and it's also a run-first offense, I think it leaves him as a low wide receiver 2 for me. And he's also been just so streaky in the past, and I don't really see that changing here. If I got him as wide receiver 3, I feel good about that. But I think anything higher, if you need him to rely on him as a wide receiver 2 or anything higher, then I really don't want to do that. But then, of course, we have, as you mentioned, they're in on the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes, so that could really change his value if they do land Watson. I think he'd probably move up to about wide receiver 18 in my rankings. I would really like that, and especially keeping Watson out of the NFC South.
NFC as well, yeah.
Yeah.
We'd all be happy.
We would, correct. And with that, we're going to move on to Matt's pick, and he's gone for running back. Who are you gone for, Matt?
Yeah, so I started talking about Chase Edmonds, obviously the former Arizona Cardinal running back, and now I'm sticking with the current Arizona Cardinal running back. James Conner is staying put. He signed a 3-year, $21 million deal. Coming off a really impressive 2021 season. So I think it's hardly surprising that the Cardinals were looking to re-sign him. 752 rushing yards, 375 receiving yards, and then those whopping 18 touchdowns, which is unreal. Finished as the RB5 in terms of fantasy. Usually gets labelled as a thumper, but I think last season he proved he's more than capable of being a 3-down running back last season. But if you do dig a little bit deeper into the efficiency, there are some potential concerns. 33rd in yards per touch, 67th in true yards per carry, 31st in breakaway run rate. So just looking at those stats, you could maybe say his success was maybe more down to volume rather than his actual efficiency in terms of running the ball. And then I think we've got to we have to expect some kind of regression in those touchdowns. I mean, coming off 18 touchdowns, I think it were right up there in terms of the amount of touchdowns that any player got last season. So yeah, I think we've got to expect some kind of downgrade in terms of touchdowns. But on this offense, you're going to say there's going to be plenty of opportunities for him to score in this offense. Still, I think a really exciting offense with Kyle Murray at quarterback. And then just the guy that we obviously spoke about a little bit earlier, Chase Edmonds, with him gone as well, kind of opens the door for him to be that lead back in Arizona. Obviously, we don't know yet in terms of the NFL draft. Could they potentially be looking at a running back? I mean, behind Connor, who have they got? Benjamin, I believe, is the only current running back on that depth chart. So I do expect him to bring in another body, and it's going to be interesting to see what running back they do bring in. But my question to you guys, it kind of ties into the guy that I spoke about at the start in Chase Edmonds. We know obviously he's left the Cardinals, and James Conner, he's staying with the Cardinals. So who would you rather take in? And I'm going to say a PPR, in a PPR dynasty league, who would you rather have, Chase Edmonds or James Conner?
Yeah, I'll put this out as a poll actually as soon as the two deals happened, and it was 69% lol to Connor.
Nice.
Very nice. So clearly the public are on Connor, and I think I'd probably say I'm probably 2/3 Connor. I'd lean. I think it's just the more proven offense. He clearly got the goal line work last season. Then he also showed that he could stay healthy, which was a key thing with Connor. Mm-hmm. When Edmonds was the one that got hurt, Connor was the one that stayed in. But both were really quite interesting for me, but I just lean Connor just from what we saw last year. Even though the stats show Edmonds, as you mentioned earlier, Matt, was really incredibly efficient with his touches. I just lean for the more proven offense, but I'd probably want them to get someone to come in as an RB2 that could take some of the work off James Conner.
Yeah, you nailed it. I think it's a great question. First of all, Matt, your best question of the show. No, Nick, it is a really good question. It got me thinking. I was very impressed with Connor last year. A bit shocked that he went straight to a split backfield as soon as Edmonds came back from his injury. I thought that Connor deserved and showed that he could do a little bit more, even though there is that durability question marks if he can do it longer term. I would want a split backfield just to help him out. Hopefully somebody better than Benjamin, but not too good. So it's kind of a tricky one. Maybe, I don't know, maybe a Ronald Jones, someone like that there might be nice. But yeah, I'm an Edmonds fan, but I am going to lean Connor. Like I said, better team is the tiebreak. Plus, he's got that track record. He's been a top 7 running back twice before. But it was close. I'll probably be above consensus on both these guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good question, Matt. Pat on the back.
I finally done something that you're both happy with. I feel so blessed.
And we'll keep the good vibes moving with a guy that I'm got a bit of a soft spot for, and it's Cedric Wilson, the awesome receiver for the Miami Dolphins. Now got a massive 3-year, £22.8 million deal. And yeah, I think when we were picking this, I was scraping the barrel a bit of the day one movers, but someone that I always thought warranted a bigger role in 2022. So I'm glad he's got the nice move over to the Sunshine State. And he was pretty impressive in 2021, registering 602 yards from just 45 catches and 6 touchdowns. He was the wide receiver 4 over the last 2 games, although short sample, but he did register 154 yards and 3 touchdowns. Just shows the upside and what he can do when he's featured. I thought when Amari Cooper was shipped off that Wilson would be staying at wide receiver 3, but obviously Miami were willing to pay up for him. And as a pretty big Tua fan, I like the move. They were certainly in need of a wide receiver help, but I don't think it stopped them from making another move for another wide receiver or drafting a wide receiver early. So just be interesting to see exactly how Wilson is used and how he lines up, because Wilson actually lined up in 90% of the time in the slot, which is the highest among all wide receivers in 2021. And then take the fact that Jalen Waddle himself played at 43.8% of the time in the slot means that something has to give there. But either way, I really like the move. I do think that he can be the wide receiver 2 on the team. And even when you think about returning Mike Gesicki and then Chase Edmonds as a catch and running back, I do think Wilson's capable of finishing as a wide receiver 3 or 4. He's currently going as a wide receiver 79, but I can imagine that he's likely taking maybe 15 to 20 spots higher now. So my question to you two is, does he receive a little bump in value for you now that he's left the Cowboys to possibly be that wide receiver 2 with Tua, or would you have preferred him to stay in Dallas as that wide receiver 3 with Dak?
Yeah, I hate it for fantasy, to be honest. I was going to discuss Cedric Wilson last week, but because of the Russell Wilson and the Aaron Rodgers news, unfortunately, Cedric Wilson got the boot from the show, partly because he's not great, but actually he was a wide receiver 2 overall in fantasy points per target last season. I would have liked him to stay in Dallas, but yeah, I think Miami have let themselves down here a bit after that great signing of Edmonds. I think it feels like a bit of a mug move, paying a guy who's got less than 850 pass catching yards in his career. Before this move, he was my wide receiver 50 in my rankings, which was fairly above his ADP, which was about wide receiver 75. But he's probably going to move back in that direction for me now towards the consensus.
Yeah. Honestly, can I just say I've got no idea about what this does in terms of fantasy, mainly because I've got no idea what the Dolphins are going to do with these pass-catching weapons that they've got. Obviously, I touched upon it a little bit earlier, but just looking at Waddle, he played over 60% of his snaps in the slot. Mike Gesicki, he was the same, over 60%. I've touched upon Cedric Wilson, over 90% in Dallas. And then, like I said, with Chase Edmonds as well being used in the slot in the past, I've generally got no idea what they're going to do. Just run a bunch of slants, get everybody doing these short routes. Honestly, I've got no idea how it's going to play out. What I'd imagine is going to happen is that Waddle's probably going to be moved more to the outside now, and then I think Wilson is going to primarily be that slot wide receiver like he was with the Cowboys, purely for the fact that that's basically just where he played. For the Cowboys, didn't really play anywhere else on the field. Was primarily used in in the slot, and I feel like that's just the best part of his game. So it makes sense to keep him in the slot. And I think Waddle is probably the guy that you'd say has got a little bit more untapped potential in terms of what he can do on the outside. But either way, I think it is now becoming a bit of a crowded situation in terms of targets for Wilson. And I think if this offense as well, obviously we've touched upon Mike McDaniel being there. If it does go to that 49er style of offense, which is potentially more run focused, again, that could be another knock on his opportunity.
I can't wait for big Cedric to prove you wrong, Kev.
Honestly, like I've got him in a load of leagues.
Because he was free, pretty much.
Yeah, I think it is a little bit weird though, isn't it? Like Miami and Jacksonville, they're just full of slot receivers now and slot tight ends. It's strange having like a competition to see who can be the I don't know, the
lowest A-dot team.
Yeah, the real life Las Vegas slot machines or something. It's unreal.
Oh, you just got to throw in Michael Thomas, slant boy, into the mix, and you. With that, we'll talk about another guy that likes to line up in the slot. Over to you, Kev.
Yeah, it's going to feel like Groundhog Day for a lot of people. I'm discussing Evan Engram again, like last week. I mean, I'm not biased, but I do like this guy. I think I'm really pleased he's left the Giants and that stink. Was I expecting the Jags? Not really. No, I thought Dan Arnold did a pretty decent job after moving there mid-season last year. But I do love this fit for Doug Peterson. He uses a tight end hell of a lot. He was consistently top 5 in usage and fantasy points for Ertz and Goddard, and include a lot of 2 tight end sets. Obviously, Ertz and Goddard are pretty decent guys, so we can't just put it all down to scheme. But yeah, I think out of Arnold and Engram, I'm favouring Engram. He's just been signed. The coaching staff's got no ties to Arnold. I think logically Dan Arnold might be moved on from the Jags, possibly Laviska Shenault as well. But yeah, we know what Engram's all about. He flashed early on. He's in a great spot to bounce back for fantasy. Currently a tight end 20 at keep trade cut, and I'm sure this will rise after free agency even more so. I'm actually going to play a game now of Would You Rather. So what I want to know is who we'd want to own in Dynasty, and we'll just go through them. So Engram or David Njoku.
Before we start, can I just give myself a little pat on the back for last week's show, because I did mention Evan Engram to the Jags as a potential move. So just wanted to give myself a little pat on the back there, because
you've ruined the game.
I just wanted to have my moment, Kev. All right, you can just let me have this, please. But yeah, a broken clock's right twice, whatever the saying is. So yeah, going back to your lovely game, Kev, that I've been excited to play. I'm going to take Evan Engram over David Njoku, I believe, just because I think he's going to see more volume in the passing game.
Yeah, is it my turn to answer as well?
It is your turn now, yeah.
Oh, right, okay. I thought it was a joke when you put David Njoku on there.
Joke.
Yeah, I think it's a joke that he got the bag as well this week. But yeah, definitely Evan Engram.
Smash in. So Evan Engram or Brevin Jordan?
Okay, this is where I'm going to switch. I'm going to go for Brevin Jordan. Really liked him as a rookie and as a prospect, and I think he came on quite nicely towards the back end of last season. And I've got high hopes for Brevin Jordan. I think he can have a really solid season next season.
Matt absolutely hates Evan Engram, I think.
It's what years of watching him as a Giant does to you after that, the highs of the first year.
I'm going to go for Evan Engram here. I think he's still got a higher ceiling than Brevin Jordan.
Right, Evan Engram or Hunter Henry?
This one was quite close for me, actually. I mean, surprising seeing I went for Jordan in the last one, but I'm going to go for Hunter Henry on this one. I just think the connection that Mac Jones and Hunter Henry, what they showed together last year, I think I just signed with Hunter Henry.
Yeah, a bit like Matt said, this was a closer one for me, but I like Hunter Henry. I like his connection with Mac Jones. He's pretty touchdown dependent, but the fact is he got plenty of touchdowns. He was massive red zone monster, so I'll stick with Hunter Henry.
We had a few more, but I think we're going to end the game there because every other guy you've not picked Engram, so absolutely fuming.
I mean, Kev, let's just let the listeners know you picked Cole Kmet, Irv Smith, and Albert O. I mean, Ali, you don't got to ask Ali about Cole Kmet. We know that he's taking Cole Kmet over all the guys you just spoke about. Irv Smith, that's a guy that I love, and obviously Ali loves as well, so he was always going to be picked. And Albert O, obviously Noah Fant moving on. I think a lot of people are going to be
Dynasty tight end one.
Well, by the sounds of it, yeah, I think he is. He is. So yeah, you need to. Well, it's tough on it with Titans. I was going to say you need to pick more competitive players, but Titans it's
Kev.
It's a mess.
Yo,
just really quickly, you're playing the game now. Who are you picking over Engram on that list?
I put Albert over him. I put Irv Smith over him.
Yeah.
And that's probably it, I think.
Oh. Thought I was going to squeeze Cole Kmet out of you then.
I'm going to be bullish on Engram and the Doug Peterson effect.
Nice.
Interesting.
It's probably just because I've got him in a few places. So just wishful thinking.
Right.
With that bombshell.
With that, we're going to move on to another tight end. I've got a couple of shares of. Matt, over to you.
Yeah, to be honest, I wasn't too excited about this one. I'm glad that you've got some shares on, so you can be excited about this guy. But CJ Uzomah, he's gone to the New York Jets, 3-year, $24 million deal, which, to be honest, I think is quite cheap, especially looking at what some of the tight ends have gone for over the last couple of days. As I say, not the most exciting move in day one of legal tampering, but to be honest, a really solid under the radar player that the Jets have managed to pick up. Had a great season in Cincinnati, coming off a tough Achilles injury in 2020. Started the season quite slowly, but became a real key part of this passing offense towards the back end of the season, and especially in the playoffs and the push that the Bengals had in the playoffs. He had 6 receptions for 64 yards and a touchdown against the Raiders in the wildcard game, and then he had 7 receptions for 71 yards against the Titans in that close divisional playoff game. So, as I say, just came in really clutch towards the back end of the season, and it was great to see him used in that offense. We all got excited about that offense, but Uzomah was the guy that kind of went under the radar that nobody really spoke about in terms of the targets and the receptions that he saw. But now he heads over to the Jets, and he instantly becomes their tight end one over there, purely down to the lack of competition at the position. We know that Zach Wilson, he obviously had his struggles last season, but I do believe that somebody like Uzomah could be great as a security blanket, a guy that's over the middle, a big target for Wilson. And I mean, to be honest, I'm clutching at straws here because he's not somebody that's going to win you a title. I mean, he's not somebody you're going to get super excited about. But in tight end premium leagues, I think he could be a guy that could be worth taking a shot on, given the fact that he's basically free right now. And I don't think this move's going to do anything to bump his value, maybe even might decrease his value, given that he's leaving that exciting Cincinnati Bengal offense. But my question back to you guys, it's quite a simple one. He finished as a tight end 19 last season. I just want to know, are you taking the over or the under of tight end 19 for CJ Uzomah in 2022?
Yeah, I'm taking the over for sure, which means he's going to finish better than tight end 19. Mm-hmm. I get that he's leaving one of the best offenses, maybe the best, for one of the stinkiest offenses of the Jets, but I just think there's not that much competition. I do like him. I've got a couple of shares of him just because he was so cheap. He had a few really big games last year, which showed his ceiling. I just think there's no point in having a tight end if you can only get, say, 10 points maximum from a tight end. But the fact is, Uzomah doesn't require touchdowns to make his production. I think he could be a big part of the Jets' offense this season. I think they're excited to have him. If he's my tight end 2 behind one of the top 8 sort of elite guys, then I'm really happy just to hold on to him to see if that value can rise, because I think he has a shot at finishing as a borderline tight end 1.
Yeah, I'm going to go over 2, which means better than tight end 19. I think, first of all, just follow the money. I mean, what was it, 3 years, 24 million? It's not a ton, but he's still pretty decently paid. I think outside of Elijah Moore, there's no one to really be scared of for competition, and plus targets do tend to go to talent. Like you mentioned, he flashed it flashed with a young stud QB in Joe Burrow, and maybe he'll flash again with a future young stud in Zach Wilson as well. I think you look at the 49ers system, the Dolphins system as it is now, the tight ends, you've got Kittle, Gasicki's going to be used really well. If Uzoma's used anything like a Kittle, then it's going to be immense.
Yeah. To be honest, I think it's just a good move for the Jets. I know we're obviously talking about fantasy, but I just think from a real life move, I think it's a great move because he's a guy that we know that this team, they're going to run the ball a lot, and with his size and what he did over it with the Bengals and helping out their running game in terms of his blocking as well. I just think overall it's a really good move for the Jets, and one that's quite underrated. And yeah, for Michael Carter, this is a tiny nice for Michael Carter. I'm all about the TJ Uzama.
Oh dear.
That's twice that I've managed to get.
I know. I wish I wouldn't have mentioned him as a. Oh god.
Don't worry, Kev, because Matt's just mentioned one of his guys, and we're going to move on now to one of your guys.
Yeah.
The last guy I want to talk about tonight is DJ Chark, landed on the Lions for a 1 year, $10 million deal, and to say the big fish has landed, Kev, and free agency is downhill from here. He lands on the Lions, and I actually really like it for the 1 year move. I think is good for both parties. I obviously would have preferred him on Kev's Eagles, or possibly with Jalen Waddle on the Dolphins to see who's the better receiver. But the fact he goes to a team where he can potentially be the guy again on a prove-it deal, I think it makes a great move for both sides. There's no long-term commitment, which is good for Chark. As the Lions, I think they're going to have a new quarterback either this year or the following year. But I think with a solid season, he can get his career back on track and go for a bigger contract this time next season. And I think this receiving core is actually quite sneaky. You've obviously got superstar receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown and Josh Reynolds. And I think they've just signed Khalif Raymond or re-signed Khalif Raymond as well. Josh Reynolds, I think he did show really good chemistry with Jared Goff down the stretch. I think they've got 4 decent receivers now. I did say on last week's show that I was intrigued by DJ Chark's landing spot. Obviously, he had a 1,000-yard season in 2019 with Gardner Minshew. He had 8 touchdowns, but unfortunately just didn't kick on since then. And we know Jared Goff at this point is not a gunslinger, but he does have that ability to go deep just when needed. So I don't think there's any immediate concerns for the chemistry with DJ Chark in 2022. But personally, I'm just not really interested in acquiring Chark. I think if I had him, I would still love to sell him while he remains somewhat relevant. And some people are hoping for that resurgence. So my question to you two is, who do you guys prefer in Dynasty, DJ Chark or Amon-Ra St. Brown?
Yeah, I love where it falls on me first to talk about a guy that I've got zero
shares. He's your favourite player, Kev.
I mean, the answer is DJ Chark, and it costs. He's just so high in my rankings. I think it's a really easy answer for me. It's Amon-Ra St. Brown. First of all, with Chark, I think he's been overrated for quite a while. I know I had him above Jalen Waddle, but that was more
your fault.
It's my fault. I've been pushing his value up. But I've not really been a fan of DJ Chark versus consensus. I just think he had that one season. It was really inefficient. It's just really tricky to see him being anything relevant in Detroit. The QB Jared Goff is not great on a deep ball. You've got guys like Hawkinson who's great. You've got Swift, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I don't think he's a flash in the pan. It's pretty simple for me. Not DJ Chark.
For me, I'm going to say it's a little bit closer, but not because I'm super. I'm not turning together. I'm not super high on DJ Chark. To be honest, I think both of them are quite overrated. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's the guy that's getting a lot of hype. Everybody on Twitter and in the community seems to be really high on him. But if you're just looking at what happened last year, a lot of his production came in that back half of the year when basically was the only pass catching weapon left on that offense. So I do think that his stats were kind of overinflated towards the back end of the year. As I say, I'm not super high on either of them. If I'm going to pick one, I'm going to take Amon-Ra St. Brown just because I think he will be used more in the passing game than DJ Chark. I do think that we know he's a deep threat, and like you touched upon, Ali, Jared Goff, he's not the best quarterback. I mean, his deep ball, it's not one of the worst in the NFL, but I just think there's going to be a lot of inconsistencies there with DJ Chark, and I just feel like you're going to get that more consistent, more solid asset in Amon-Ra St. Brown. But in all honesty, I don't really want either of them. If I do have either of them, luckily I don't, but if I did, I'd be looking I'd be looking to move off them. And as I say, especially Amon-Ra St. Brown, just because I think he is so highly valued currently in the community. I mean, let's not forget, it was a 4th round pick, and he didn't really do much, did he? Until he was, as I say, the only receiving option left. So yeah, my long-winded answer to your question is Amon-Ra St. Brown.
I'll just add as well, like Amon-Ra St. Brown, if you own him, which I don't actually own him in any league, it's a pretty perfect free agency, really. Re-sign Josh Reynolds, re-sign Raymond. The big wide receiver they've signed is DJ Chark, which kind of that might put them out of running for taking a wide receiver, really. If they don't take a wide receiver, really, I think that's been a really positive off-season for Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah. I certainly think you're going to get more for Amon-Ra St. Brown trading him away right now while the hype is still there, unless Kev is after DJ Chark and he might send a nice offer to you. I'm sorry, Kev. We'll end it there with the DJ Chark.
I love it.
With that bombshell, I think we'll bring tonight's show to an end, where we're given our reaction to the start of free agency from a dynasty point of view. So is there any final thoughts on today's show? I'll come to you first, Kev.
I mean, talking about free agency just gets me so excited. I think some of the deals have been a bit head-scratching, but I mean, we're not part of the front office of NFL teams. We don't know the plan, the big plan that's coming together for these teams. But yeah, I'm just a little bit disappointed that Philly haven't got their wide receiver yet. I would like to talk about someone's value getting crushed. So that's going to be one to watch for me over the next week. So, but yeah, just try not to overreact to these landing spots either way, really. And I think I touched upon it a bit earlier. Running backs, if you like a Chase Edmonds, a James Conner, it's fine to go after them, but just don't be getting crazy on that, because they could get someone drafted as well, which hurts the value.
Yeah, just basically to repeat what Kev said in terms of fantasy, just don't overreact too much to these changes in situations that we've just seen. There's still plenty of time for things to change. Just looking at a few of the free agents that are still out there, guys like Melvin Gordon, Leonard Fournette, Rashad Penny, these are all decent running backs that could create some havoc in terms of backfields. And then wide receivers, still got Allen Robinson, Jarvis Landry, Juju Smith-Schuster as well. These are some really solid wide receivers as well that have yet to get new landing spots. So as I say, a lot of things can change. And then like Kev said, there's the NFL draft as well next month. So still plenty of times for things to get shaken up just yet. Don't go making any rash moves. Basically what Kev just said about, especially in terms of running back. Don't go making any rash moves right now and trying to jump all this hype that you think could be about to come, because there's just as much chance that it could backfire. I'm having flashbacks to Jonnu Smith last year. Obviously when he signed, I was super excited, and then basically the next day Hunter Henry came in and absolutely destroyed it. So yeah, just be a little bit cautious for the moment.
Yeah, certainly some big names still to fall. The domino effect, Deshaun Watson to the NFC South possibly, or Cleveland, and Allen Robinson is going to land on the Eagles, Kev. I've got every hope that's going to happen.
I'll be getting a jersey, that's about it.
But yeah, it's just a fluid situation, so don't be too hasty in making moves right now, because a lot can change in the next month. And with that, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Twitter at Fantasy Wildcards. Also, leave us a 5-star podcast review if you've enjoyed today's show. It really does help get an exposure to a wider audience. And join us for our next show, where we'll be welcome on the awesome Chad Parsons of the Football Guys to recap the first week of free agency. It's been pretty wild so far. So thank you once again. Have a good one, and we'll see you soon.